Warriors beat SF Standard, River Islands guest line, and on video with us on YouTube as well, Danny Emerman talking Dubs. Hey, Danny, what's going on, man?
Hey, not much. Thanks for having me on, guys. How are you guys doing?
Just to be honest, a little Warrior depressed today. I feel like the Draymond Green contract that was signed today was the final nail in the coffin of something we knew was already coming, but just the reality of it is kind of a bummer, which is that the Warriors really, really, really are just running this thing back, aren't they?
They sure are. I don't know if the Draymond Green signing in particular made people feel some type of way, because I felt like that was coming down the pike no matter what. Draymond opted out with the idea that, hey, I'm going to get, my money and I'm going to stay here one way or another. I think he deserves credit for giving the Warriors some level of flexibility to at least pursue LeBron James earlier in the free agency period. But yeah, he's coming back. They're getting the band back together, 37-win team, and they'll do all the same things. It'll be like Groundhog Day. It's like, can Rick Celebrini work his magic? Can we limit our turnovers enough to go on a little run? Can we, survive without Jimmy and Moody enough? All the same things we were talking about last year. So should be a fun year.
Yeah, super fun and also frustrating, because you imagine a team that's a year older and now you're expecting guys to not be as injured. Is it really as simple as Rick Celebrini, if they have a healthy year, that he might be the MVP if he can coax more out of Steph, and certainly Kristaps Porzingis?
Yeah, I know people were saying that last year, and it didn't quite work out, that way, where Rick got all his flowers. But yeah, he and his training staff are going to have a lot of work on their plate, and how healthy the team stays, it's not entirely due to Rick and his training staff. It comes down to what the players do to get their bodies right and condition themselves. But yeah, he's definitely one of the more important figures on this team for sure.
Danny Emerman with us here on Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. What do you think is going to happen at the end of next month with Steph Curry when he becomes extension eligible?
I would imagine that he and the Warriors work towards his contract extension. I think they've both been honest and open about having mutual interest in one. So, I think that's, Occam's razor is the most likely thing. That'll probably happen.
Okay. What does that extension look like, though? What kind of numbers are we talking about? Is he taking a max, 1 year, 2 years? What are we looking at?
So I've talked to people about this topic broadly. I think Steph hypothetically would be open to taking a pay cut. But I think he would only do so if it would really help the team competitively. If he could take half as much and that would really help get the next huge free agent or make a new trade, I think he would be open to at least considering that. But yeah, the way the NBA contracts work is you can either tack on 1 or 2 years to an over 37-year-old player, which Steph famously is. So I would imagine that it's probably a 1-year deal, and they keep pushing it out, do it, revisit it every, offseason.
Does he have the ability to wait until December, January, February? In other words, to really size up how good Yaxel is and is Richard better and Guy, really see what his team for the next year might look like?
Yes, he does. There's no deadline on an extension, like a veteran max extension, so he can take it into the season if he'd prefer. And that's something that I could see him doing for sure.
Okay, to that end, though, Danny, and I'm sure you're aware of this, there is so much talk, and I feel it comes actually from the fan base, not from Steph, but fear about him getting to a point where he wants to play somewhere else, or he might use this extension eligibility as leverage against the Warriors. How do you see these two sides? Are they on the same page? And does Steph have even the potential to want to play somewhere else at some point?
We can only go by what's available, the information available to us. And the information available to us in terms of what Steph has said publicly, what people around him have said privately, is that he wants to finish his career as a Warrior. So I don't see that changing. It's possible, that things can change and things can go really sideways, and maybe he has a change of heart. But no, I mean, the Warriors want him to finish as a Warrior. He wants to finish here. That's as far as he's said. So I don't know why it would be worth speculating otherwise. I think it's important to note that even though this offseason was probably pretty frustrating for a lot of fans, the Warriors don't make moves, or they don't choose to not make moves without at least running it by Steph. He's privy to everything they're doing. And if he was really upset by something, or if he was banging the table on something else, like maybe this offseason would have gone differently, for better or worse. But we haven't heard anything that would suggest that Steph's really upset by this offseason.
Would we be, I guess, assuaged and have us feeling better if he signed the extension earlier, as opposed to kind of what you're laying out, which is if it's another year like last year where it's the runner's knee and Jimmy's not back soon and maybe Moses doesn't play at all, would it be more comforting for Warrior fans to have him sign early as opposed to wait?
I guess it depends on the Warriors fan you're talking about, right? I'm sure some Warriors fans probably want to see him play for a contender. I'm not really, in the business of fan behavior policing. Fans can root for the team however they want. It's all good. But yeah, I think if you want Steph to stay as a Warrior and finish his career here and cheer him on for the rest of his career, that's cool. Then yeah, you'd root for him to sign the extension as soon as he can.
Danny, I'm also interested in the Steve Kerr angle. This one's interesting to me. The last time we heard him speak, he said, we need more people who can play back-to-backs. And now the roster is almost exactly the same except for Yaxel. I also had the perception that as he talked about potentially coming back, if he was going to do that, it was going to be based on some sort of a philosophical change, which, again, we also can't see. So is this what Steve signed up for based on what you know?
I think what Steve signed up for is what he's been hinting at, repeatedly for the past year or so. And it's that, we're not a championship contender anymore. And we want to go out with dignity. We want to go out together. We want to go out, playing our style of basketball and competing as much as we can. I think that's what he signed up for. I don't think he was given any assurances that the Warriors would go out and get LeBron. I actually know that to be a fact, that he wasn't given any assurances. As a competitor, I'm sure he wanted to improve. And I think that first part of your question about how he described that we need, younger guys, we need to have more continuity on back-to-backs. We need to get fresher, younger legs. I think that's a good example that, contrary to popular belief, Steve doesn't run the show. He's not the GM. If he had it his way in that dynamic, in that element, I think the roster might look a little bit differently. But he's not the GM, and Mike Dunleavy is.
And you look at what's taken place in July, and, Colin Sexton and other lower-level free agents just kind of whooshed on by as they waited for LeBron James. Do you think they're all eggs in the LeBron basket was a good approach, a bad approach, or the only one they could have made?
It was, waiting for LeBron. I've heard various different things from sources about that. Some people thought that they had an okay shot. Some people at Summer League were, cautiously optimistic, but were really in the dark. Other people after the fact kind of knew, or at least they said that they knew early on in the process that it wasn't going to be them. So I don't think that the LeBron really sweepstakes affected the way the Warriors went out and did business this summer. And that might even frustrate people even more. But I think part of their plan was to roll over, Porzingis to maintain the asset. So that's one piece you're bringing back. I know that they like Melton. They probably valued him higher than some of the fresher, new guards that were on the market. So that was part of the plan too. Draymond, obviously part of the plan, and then Horford. And then that's kind of how you get, running it back. And it kind of all happened so fast and nothing really happened.
So, Danny, they're holding on to this optionality and flexibility as if it's a baby bird in a nest. And I want to know where's this going? And in what way does that flexibility what does it even grant you in today's NBA, where it seems like big time, middle of their career free agents never change teams anyway?
No, it's a trading league for sure. And part of the Warriors' optionality is that they have tradable contracts. They have their future draft picks to dangle in trades, whether or not they want to push all of them in, some of them in, swaps, whatever, depends on a case-by-case basis. But yeah, you just saw a crazy offseason where there was a ton of player movement. LaMelo Ball and Jaylen Brown, LeBron James, almost all trades. So the Warriors are going to be in the market, for a trade that makes their team better at some point. And if not, then it's not a bad thing to have your own picks. But I do obviously see the argument where you should be pushing them in, cashing them in as much as you can while Steph Curry is still amazing. I obviously, understand that. But the alternative isn't terrible to have all your picks either.
Especially as you get to the post-Steph era. And I'm just wondering already ahead toward the deadline with Jimmy Butler and his $56 million deal. Didn't feel like there was a lot of action this offseason for that contract. Does that change if he's able to come back and play a little bit before the deadline?
It could. It could be really interesting to see how he comes back from that knee injury. I've heard that he's targeting, as early as Christmas. Who knows how his rehab, turns out. That is something that's obviously subject to change. If he comes back and he looks awesome, the Warriors might not want to trade him. They really love Jimmy Butler. And from what I've been told behind the scenes, they've constantly reassured him and his camp that they don't want to trade him, that they're committed to him. So I think it's possible that he comes back and looks just okay. And that's kind of normal for a 37-year-old attempting an unprecedented rehab. And if that's the case, then maybe you can get him back on maybe a veteran minimum deal, maybe a mid-level exception kind of level. That would be an interesting piece going forward, as just a contributor. But I don't know. We'll see how he looks when he comes back, either in December, January, February, whenever he does.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco and Odyssey Sports Station, home of the Golden State Warriors and Valkyries, always live on the free Odyssey app. Coming to you live from the Laughing Monk Studios, and it's basketball talk right now with Danny Emerman, SF Standard on the Warriors. That coverage on 95.7 The Game is presented by Xfinity. Score the most reliable Wi-Fi. One price, 5 years guaranteed. Xfinity, imagine that. Danny, your coworker Tim Kawakami has suggested that Joe Lacob is quite interested, maybe even if he just keeps this somewhat private, but very interested in kind of showing the world that the Warriors are still going to be a high-class, first-rate organization post-Steph Curry. What's your perspective on that? When you see, talk to, and read the tea leaves with Joe Lacob, is he kind of overly interested in that dynamic? What do you think?
You don't really need to read any tea leaves. You can just go up and ask Joe about it. He's told me as much. I wrote a story last year about how he was talking about, how the Lakers and Jerry Buss, that's what he wants to emulate. He wants to make it to the finals every year and have a, 30-year span. And by definition, not all those 30 years will include Steph Curry. So I was kind of laughing that went so viral and people were so frustrated by that. I know Tim was amused as well. That's not a secret that Joe wants to succeed after Steph. He said it over and over again, and that's not a bad thing, to have your owner want to win no matter what. And again, both things can be true. He should really want to commit to this era as well. I understand the frustration. But yeah, Joe's obviously going to want to win. He's spent more than any other owner. It's tough, he's owned the team 16 years. I think his first decade as owner was an A++, 10 out of 10, no complaints, probably the best owner in sports, universally acclaimed. Past 6 years, they've won one title. That's not bad. But maybe he's a 5 or 6 out of 10 as an owner. Again, not living up to his standard, but also you could do so much worse than Joe Lacob as an owner. So, I mean, you even it out. He's still one of the best owners in sports. He's the source of some of the Warriors' issues for sure. He's also the source of a lot of solid, amazing organizational things that he's built over the last 16 years. And he deserves credit. He deserves blame. That's all fair.
Danny, I think you get this. The reason that landed with people in kind of a funny way is not that anybody's saying, boy, Joe Lacob's a bad owner. That would be ridiculous. But when that sort of is what's highlighted, not so much, hey, he wants to keep winning after Steph. Sure. But the thought is he prioritizing that now over the idea of pushing chips into the middle of the table while Steph is still here? That's why that landed with everyone so kind of poorly, and I think you know that. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the Warriors have gone after a bunch of these guys and put a bunch of their future picks on the table, and sometimes those deals don't get executed. And you can blame the owner for that, but there's a lot of factors. It takes two teams to tango on these big superstar trades. Yeah, I understand where people are coming from, and that was also, a 10-second clip out of a long conversation that Tim was having as well. Yeah, I understand why people are frustrated. They have every right to be frustrated. Again, I'm not going to tell fans how to feel. It's their right to feel how they want to. It's their right to buy tickets, not buy tickets. Go to a Giants game, do the wave, do tarps off. I don't care.
Not the
Just
wave.
have fun.
Yeah, not the wave.
But
anyway, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, let's keep the tarps on for the most part. Danny, I just wonder about a jealousy tax around the league. In other words, teams not wanting to even trade with the Warriors, and if they do, taxing Joe Lacob a little more because he is self-confident and he's got 4 rings.
I think that's the type of thing that happens in sports. I don't see why it wouldn't happen necessarily to the Warriors, but I don't think it's the biggest factor in not being able to execute some of these deals. I think there's a lot of things that go into it, and that might be one on a case-by-case basis, maybe around the Kawhi deal. You hear some rumors about that one, and at the ownership level, maybe things, weren't super perfect in that respect. But who knows if that deal would have even gone through. The Kawhi can't get traded now, apparently.